Over the past 2 years, Andy Scheckman and I have published 32 episodes of our podcast called Let's Talk Silver. There's been hours upon hours of conversations and great footage you've probably missed unless you've been religiously watching every single hour-long plus episode since early 2022. So I've been making compilation highlight reels of Andy's most important topics and discussions we've had. I've been combing through dozens of episodes to put these together for you all, so please like these videos, watch till the end, and share them. It goes a very long way. This is part 3 of this compilation series with 5 different podcasts I've grabbed clips from. So subscribe, kick back, and enjoy.
So ask yourself this question, man. How the hell can we remain the dominant economic and military superpower in the world when we have to borrow money just to pay the interest on our debt and to fund our military?
Yeah.
Why would our foes like China want to, and Russia and Saudi Arabia, why would they want to borrow us money for us to fund our military?
Attack them. Right, and attack.
Right, and not protect them, actually push back against them.
Yeah. So this
and then
crazy.
You know, you look at a comment that Putin made at a conference that he was just at, and he said that the next meeting for the BRICS, which will be in Russia this coming summer, will be dedicated to a fair world order. He said, as a world order based on rules, there are no such rules. In fact, they change every day depending on the current political situation and short-term interests of those who talk about it. So he's basically saying that, you know, the West makes up their rules, and those rules are what we all have to live by. But this is the rallying cry that is bringing everyone together. And, you know, since 2014, Putin and Xi Jinping have met over 40 times. And this group, this union that really is centered around Putin and Xi Jinping, and then the rest of the BRICS countries, is gaining legitimacy day by day by day. What you got here?
This is Alex Mooney pressing Federal Chairman Jerome Powell about our gold, about the repatriating our gold. He said, this was published on December 15th. He says, you have to respond to these questions in writing no later than January 15th. He gave him exactly 1 month. He says, 1, has the Federal Reserve or the Federal Reserve Bank of New York repatriated any gold to foreign nations this year? If so, to which countries and how much? 2, how much gold is in the Federal Reserve vaulting for foreign nations and now, and how does this compare to the amount vaulted at the end of 2022? And 3, does the New York Fed statement of November 9th asserting that the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury Department did not intervene in the foreign exchange markets during the July to September 2023 quarter cover the gold market as well? And then it goes on to echo his concerns about how citizens deserve to know what's happening with our, you know, with the gold and all this stuff. But
yeah, so you know, this is one of the things that really got me on this path, because in 2017, well, it started more like in 2014 or 15, the Bundesbank, the German Bundesbank, said to the Fed, give us back our gold. And it took a long time for the Fed to do it. And so by 2017, they were getting really angry, and they were publicly saying, give us back our damn gold. And so there's questions as to why it took so long.
3 years.
There's anecdotal evidence that the bars that they sent to them did not match the bars that they were holding. But, you know, it was shortly after that the Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, Czech National Bank, Dutch National Bank, they all did the same thing. They repatriated their gold from the New York Fed and from the Bank of England. And these banks have been doing exactly that, because 2 years later in 2019, gold was revalued as a tier 1 asset, and which is a riskless asset. So there's no question but that I think, you know, these banks the central banks would hold their gold at the New York Fed and the Bank of England, because it allows them access to the price setting mechanism of the COMEX and the LBMA. And I think as we move closer to some event that will center around gold, we will see, I believe, price setting emerge in other parts of the globe. India just opened up an exchange. You have the Shanghai Gold Exchange, you have the Moscow Exchange, you have the exchange in Dubai. You're going to see price setting move away from the West and move to the East, where these countries are the epicenter of gold and silver. And
Yeah.
I think the reason that you don't see as much bitching by these countries for the suppression of the West is that they're on a buying spree. And if you're going to
Of
slowly and
course.
methodically drain the coffers around the globe, you want there to be Western suppression. You're beating the West at their own game, and they're doing the dirty work for you by holding down the
Yeah.
paper price, because
Yeah.
it
This
is
is
it signals fragility in the bond market and the dollar and the whole system. And so that, the people who are accumulating it are saying, great, well, once we have enough and we can't get any more, well, maybe we'll bitch about it then, or maybe we'll just flip the
yeah.
switch and
There you
use
go.
the Shanghai Gold Exchange or one of these other exchanges to set a real price, which
Yeah.
immediately would arbitrage everything in the make-believe Western system over
Yeah.
that way. So yeah,
Right.
we're getting there little by little.
Yeah. Yeah, when I covered the actual, I should have showed the actual article from that because Alex Mooney, he makes some like this wasn't like just a little like, what's happening. He was like, what's going on? He's like, why did it take you 3 years to repatriate? I forget which
The
country it was.
German gold, the
Yeah,
Bundesbank,
three
that's what it was.
years. 3 years. And he's like, what's going on? Citizens deserve to know, where's our gold?
Well,
What
not
are
only
we?
that,
Yeah.
and Alex
It's
Mooney has been he's been at the forefront of this. He's
yeah.
done other things too, including trying to remove all taxes related to precious metals, and he's certainly in our camp.
Yeah,
Um,
I've covered him a lot.
yeah, no, he's certainly a good one. But look, I think that you can look at something like Ron Paul, who's tried repeatedly to audit the Fort Knox gold holdings, and he's shot down continuously. And why? And it begs the question: if this is the American, this is the goal of the American people, then why not be forthright about it? And this is
Yeah.
one of the another rallying cry that we're seeing, is how opaque our system is, the lack of transparency. And this is why I believe, in order to make this work, which it will, a system that will use gold pegging will have to marry blockchain technology, so that you can have transparency and no more promises and opaque. It's kind of like you catch your girlfriend or your wife cheating on you. Okay, fine. I'll forgive you. And then it happens a second and a third time. Well, fine, but well, let me see your phone. No, the phone's locked. Well, the point of it is that that's a very bad analogy. But the point of it
No.
is that our phone is locked. If we can't show the
Yeah.
world what we're holding, if we're not going to audit it, and if people are going to try to get it back, and it takes 3 years, I mean, well, it seems like the phone is locked and you're hiding something. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
Shame, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, how about fool me 37 times? And that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're getting at. And I give a lot of credit to a guy like Alex Mooney, who is a lone voice
Yeah.
up there with Rand and Ron Paul, who have tried to inject a little bit of transparency and authenticity into this system, and you can see the pushback. And
Do
this is why power is slowly slipping from the West, because we are losing the one thing that, if you lose, might be harder to get back than anything, and that is trust. And I think we are losing the
yeah.
trust and the confidence of the world,
Yeah.
and certainly the good graces of our foreign creditors, who have allowed us to live beyond our means for a very long time. And instead of clinging to what it would be to be an American, and to enjoy the world reserve status, and to be the center of free trade, and to be the beacon of light and democracy around the globe, we are doing everything we can to piss on that. And it's very disheartening, I think, when you look at it from the lens of a patriot. And I am a patriot. I'm someone this country has given more to than I could ever hope for. And the opportunities this country has given me, I mean, my father and I are the least likely cast of characters to have ever achieved what we did. My dad was a hippie. I was a halfway decent student, but never would have dreamed in my life that we would end up here. And it's because of the opportunities this country has given me. I am not someone who doesn't notice that, but that's what makes this whole thing much more disheartening is the decisions we are
Yeah,
making. A guy
yeah,
like Alex Mooney is a beacon of light in what is a really cesspool of darkness in Washington. So God bless Alex Mooney, and everyone should support him. I
yeah,
think he's awesome.
yeah. The scary, because when I was covering this article the other day, I was talking about how this it's kind of scary because even if federal chairman Jerome Powell does respond honestly and it exposes a lot of dirty secrets, that's going to be dangerous within itself, so whether it's the truth or the hiding secrets, I feel like both ways are going to be bad.
Well, and at the same time that the Fed is being reluctant to repatriate other countries' gold, you have central bank gold buying at the highest it's ever been, ever
Yeah,
in history. And you have China, which is, bought record amounts of gold over the first 9 months of the year. And it's crazy. So, it's 12 tons they've bought in the first 9 months of the year. And that's just what they report. A lot of the gold they
yeah,
buy, they don't report. And all the gold they're mining, they don't report. And that's why guys like Alistair McLeod will tell you that they have close to 40,000 metric tons, 5 times what we supposedly have. And, of which half of it's owned by the people and half of it's owned by the government. And you go to China and you go into a mall and 80% of the stores are gold shops. And you
yeah.
go in, you
It's
look at the back
crazy.
of a bus and there's advertisements for buying gold. You go into a bank, you buy Chinese pandas right there. They are a country who understands what gold represents. And there's an old saying, I don't know
Ooh,
how old it is, but it's a lot older than me. And that is he who has the gold makes the rules. And I think that's kind of what the East is understanding and what the West has forgotten, unfortunately. A guy like Alex Mooney hasn't, and
yeah,
God bless the guy for saying that.
yeah. I like that. He who has the gold makes the rules. That is cool. It's so true. Like it really is determined. I mean, I forget what I was watching the other day, but they were talking about how gold is basically how we determine a country's wealth. Like it's not how much money you print off. We determine it off gold. And if you apply that to a person to person, basis, whoever has more gold is the one wealthier than the person that has millions in their bank account.
Well, I mean, look at
Uh,
the United States. Everyone assumes that we're so wealthy, but look at
right.
our balance sheet. We
Yeah.
have 5 trillion in assets, of which 40% is student debt. Yes, that's right. You heard me. The US government considers student debt to be an asset. And so you take that out, that's 1.6 trillion. You take that out, we have just over 3.5 trillion in assets backing 150 or more trillion in debt. 34 trillion on balance sheet, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions. We are above 150 trillion in debt. We are insolvent. We're broke. And so,
Yeah.
how wealthy are we? We are a country
Yeah.
that has had the ability to print money at will. So, yes, we have the appearance of being very
Yeah.
wealthy, but in essence, it's all an illusion. It's all a
Yeah.
mirage. And this is why you're seeing the central banks buy more gold than ever. It's not just gold, too. I mean, look at silver. You
Yeah.
have, as an example, India, right? India bought 304 million ounces of silver last year, and we talked a lot about that. They also bought 60 million ounces in October and 20 million ounces in November. So they've bought another 80 million ounces that we know of
Yeah.
already this year. They've bought 400 million ounces of silver in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And so think about that for a second. That's way more than is on the whole COMEX ecosystem. These
Yeah.
countries are using the bullshit suppression of the Western market against us. These countries understand that in the end, he who has the gold and silver and the world's commodities make the rules. And the same thing is true about lithium and cobalt and nickel and copper. All of these items are either being accumulated by or are largely found in the ground of these nations that are joining the BRICS. So we haven't thought this whole plan through very well, where we are reliant for importing the majority of these hard assets that one would need to develop a war chest. And that's why you're seeing these things being done methodically and slowly, and not rushing to buy up as much as you can to alert everyone that this is
Right.
what's going on. It's a much more strategic game of, misdirection, I guess you could say.
Last week, I made a poll on my channel asking you all what you think silver's price should be. 4.5 thousand people voted. The results were incredibly interesting, and in the Silver Stacking podcast that Andy Scheckman and I do every Thursday, I wanted to show this poll to Andy and get his opinion on these numbers. I wanted to bring something up. I haven't even showed you this. I wanted to kind of surprise you with this. I did a poll last week asking people what they think silver's true price is, actual price. And I posted it. This week, it has 4.5 thousand votes. So we get a pretty good idea of what the majority of people think. So I'm about to pull this up. You can see I said, what should silver's price be? And there's 4.5 thousand votes. 4.5 thousand. That's a lot of people. So 13% said below $50, 29%, which is the top category, is $50 to $100. 22% says 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000 is 9%, and second is 1,000 plus. And reading some of these comments, very interesting. I went through a lot of them in a video last week, but it only had like 1,000 votes, so now you get a better idea. But some people have some great stuff. I pinned this one. It says shut down the price manipulation on the COMEX and you'll see silver is worth more than gold. But there's some pretty cool stuff on there. I want to get your opinion on on those numbers.
Picking a number is always a guess. It could be
It's very
educated.
hard.
It is hard. It could be biased. But I think that, look, I think the price will go higher than anyone thinks possible. That's just the bottom
Ted
line.
Butler.
I think it will go higher. And that's the one truism that I've learned in all these years in finance is that markets go higher to the upside than anyone ever thinks possible, won't fall further to the downside than anyone thinks possible. When I started in this industry in 1989, the Nikkei was 41,000 or nearly. And they owned Japanese-owned Pebble Beach and Rockefeller Center and casinos in Vegas and ski resorts in Colorado. And anything with a motherboard or an engine, they made better than we did. And everyone thought they were taking over the world. And let's look and see what the Nikkei is today here. 30 plus years later, the Japanese Nikkei is at 32,000. It's never come back, ever. And it's still 8,000 points plus away from where it was when I started in this industry. And that is with interest rates being at or near zero the entire time. They still couldn't get people back into the market. So it's taken over 3 decades to even get about 75% of the way back to where they once were. And by the same token, the Dow Jones was 2,100. And the first conference I went to, I remember vividly, I went with my dad. I was 19. And one guy, it was a hard asset conference in Las Vegas. And one guy said the Dow Jones would go to 10,000, and he was laughed off the stage. And here I watch it go from 2,100 to 36,000. No one expected that, as much as no one expected the Nikkei to do what it did. And so when you look at silver and its expansion in uses, and the fact that it's on a large industrial level, arguably we're witnessing a decrease in supply and major delivery off the exchanges. If you realize it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1 right now, I mean, pick a number, put gold at 3,000, divide by 7. What do you get? Over $300 an ounce. Even at 2,000, divide by 7. And so the point is, it's not that crazy to make a statement like that. I mean, if you take 2,000 We're almost there right now. And divide by 7, you could argue that realistically it should be $285 an ounce. That's the geologic ratio between gold and silver right now. It has gone from 16 to 1 to 7 to 1, according to Keith Newmeyer and all of his research as the CEO of First Majestic Silver and other mining companies. So could it be 300 an ounce? Hell yeah, why not? Put it at 5,000 and divide by 7. What do you get? 5,000 divided by 7,
which is a very
$715 an ounce. Is that crazy? Maybe, maybe not. Is it crazy to think gold could go to 3, 4, or 5,000 in an environment where the most sophisticated, well-funded, and well-informed central bankers are massively are taking possession of it and accumulating it at levels that the world has never seen before? And you look at the central bank's acquisition of gold last year, or was the biggest year ever, and we're already ahead of that this year in terms of how much the central banks are buying. It just is. It's an environment where the biggest money in the world is showing you the way that they look at gold and silver. So these prices could go a whole hell of a lot higher. But I want to make it very clear. This is not why we buy it. We buy
it's not about that.
It's not to get wealthy. It is wealth, and it will go to 3, 4, 500 an ounce in the face of a dollar collapsing.
That's what I was going to say. You have to look at it from the purchasing power of a dollar decreasing, so it takes more dollars to purchase that ounce. Like the Zimbabwe $1 trillion bill. You see those people holding signs that says "broke billionaire," in third world countries. Like,
well, if you look at China and Japan, the second and third largest economies in the world, gold reached all-time highs against both of them recently. It's not the price of gold going to the moon. It's the dollar that we measure it against, or the other currencies that are being measured against it, that matter. And the dollar is inordinately and unjustifiably strong. So everything that we value it against, even looking at the CPI came way down because the dollar went way up. And so it's all an illusion. Everything from the way that we gauge inflation to the price of commodities in the face of an inordinately strong dollar that much of the world is trying really hard to break free from by chipping away at its hegemony day by day, by day, by day, by day, and little by little by little, logarithmic decay, bang, it snaps. And, as far as I'm concerned, we haven't seen anything yet. So those prices could all be justifiable. But I want people to know that's not why I own it or why I sell it. And yes, you could actually thrive, not just survive, if you own enough of it. But that's not why you buy it. And you buy it because the dollar's in trouble, and you're trying to find a medium of exchange that has been agreed upon through all of time and history, something that's outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it. And that's what gold and silver represent. And it's an exodus from a matrix that is sick and that is dying, and the Keynesian experiment that is coming to an end. So you could make a lot of money, and it could go a hell of a lot higher, but be careful what you wish for, because we have $300-400 an ounce silver. You're going to have a Big Mac that's $12, or, or a cup of coffee at Starbucks that's $5, or whatever it may be. The dollar that we call money, our currency, is being, little by little by little, it is being sidestepped for other alternatives like gold, like other currencies at this point, at least in terms of settlement, as we see across the globe. And over time, all of this settlement done outside the dollar will start to impact the reserve status of the dollar. And I think those days are growing closer. So when we see these pullbacks, these subsidies that make no sense, look at it as a bonus. Don't be disheartened by it. Look at it as, geez, these people are truly idiots that they're giving me that much more time to continue to add to my stack in an environment where everything we see around us should dictate that metals would be exceedingly higher than they are right now. So, it's not an investment, you guys, it's wealth. And that's the way I look at it. And it might go really high and make you wealthy, but that's not why we buy it.
If you truly think about the COMEX collapsing, or just how manipulated the prices, and if any day that were to come to light, and not in I couldn't say like in a perfect world, but even something is something as realistic as that would happen in the nickel market a couple of years ago, or even the signs that things are happening. COMEX, LBMA, and the LME all admitted that their reserves are low, and it's not getting any better. I made a video yesterday, and even in the intro, I mentioned something that you just said, because it's talking about AI fueling precious metals demand in 2024. Yes. And in the
The need for
intro,
microchips.
yep. And it's only going to, it's only going to get more, and it's only going to become more obvious that we don't have enough silver. And in the intro, I even said, AI to fuel precious metals demand in 2024. I know what you're thinking. This is great. We could make a pretty penny, but at what cost, right? If you think about the bigger picture of why we need this silver, yeah, it's great. It's rainbows and unicorns, but when you really look at it, it could be extremely scary for the reasons we're trying to go green.
Correct. Correct. I agree. And I think that's the important way to look at it. You're buying this because we are at the end of a long experiment in Keynesian economics that is a system based on debt and consumption and taxation, whereas the Austrian economic system, which would have been a much better path to follow, is one that is built upon savings, investment, and reinvestment. It's the brick house and the little three pigs story versus the one made of straw, and the wolf comes and blows it down.
Wow,
Well,
I
you could
like
argue the
that.
wolf is about ready to blow this house
I like
down
that.
because we have, in many respects, we have not only lost a lot of the respect that the world has for us and or the good graces of our foreign creditors, where countries like China, as they are accumulating more and more gold, lo and behold, are down to their lowest treasury holding in over 14 years. You could say the same thing about Saudi Arabia, their lowest treasury holding in almost 10 years. And they continue to sell treasuries in favor of hard assets. And that's really the name of the game. That's what Zoltan Pozar told us was coming. Bretton Woods 3, a system dominated by commodities and transparency. And, our system is opaque. It's based on debt instruments, rehypothecation, taxation. People say, well, who will trust the BRICS? Well, who's going to trust us anymore? Who's
There
going to
you go.
trust us? And I think you look at our legal system, you look at the divisiveness in this country, you look at all of the things around us that are equally as troubling as what we see around us outside the country with the mismanagement of the dollar, the sanctions, the coercion, all of these things that are making countries around the world say, I'm not quite sure. We talked about this last week, but for those people who didn't listen, we invaded Iraq 20 years ago, or didn't hear, by the way. And here it is 20 years ago. And last year, as an example, Iraq made $90 billion in oil revenue. And we don't let them direct the
Yeah.
proceeds of that. It's held in a bank at the New York Fed and or an account at the New York Fed. They asked the US for $1 billion of their $90 billion that they made last year. And we said no. So, I mean, you can see exactly why these countries around the world are rallying against the hypocrisy and the coercion and the hegemony of the dollar. And Iraq is no different. They publicly said they would like to join BRICS if invited. They're making trading in dollars illegal. All physical green bills will be out of the country and out of the banks by January 1 of 2024. So, you can see why this is happening. And it's something that our leaders are going down the wrong path. And if we were a united, strong country where it was about being an American, not black or white or red or blue or vax or no vax or rich or poor or whatever your political affiliation or ideology is, you are defined now by who you voted for last year. That's complete and total bullshit. Shouldn't be that way. We're Americans. We're all supposed to be pulling in the same direction. That's what this country was about, united into one common cause. And we are anything but. So I fear more so now for our ability to deal with this kind of really very serious ramifications of global de-dollarization and all of the things that are happening that are, I guess you could say, are anti-capitalistic, anti-American, anti-dollar. And that's why
Yeah.
we buy gold and silver, because the rest of the system is lacking trust and transparency and credibility. And I think if you are not a contrarian, you are bound to be a victim. I do believe that.
All right. Yeah. Okay, we can switch subjects.
Yeah, probably a good
But
idea.
yeah, it was a good talk though. I feel like a lot of people will be,
Yeah, it'll be
will
interesting to
be,
read the comments. But
yeah.
hey, man, I'm a real guy, and
Yeah. I
I say it like it is, and I have respect for the office of the presidency, no matter
yeah.
what. I just don't have much respect for the way that our politicians are leading us into some dark places.
Yeah. So this is one of the questions that I had down, especially kind of just to flip the page. What is like, let's say you have like a newer or even just like an average everyday silver stacker. Because I know how someone would invest back in the day or buy, back in the day, the markets have changed even since I've started. What advice would you offer just like the everyday average silver stacker? Like
Pay
what
yourself
are some
first.
tips?
Pay yourself first. You want to work out and get big, you got to do it methodically and be regimented. You want to diet, you got to be methodical and regimented. You want to get off the wheel or get out of the rat race, you have to pay yourself first in a regimented, methodical way. I would buy things like Buffalo Rounds if I was really cost conscious, or any coins from the six major mints of the world if I had the ability to do so. US, Canada, Austria, Australia, South Africa, United Kingdom. And if
Mm,
I'm going to buy bars, I would, try and do 10 ounce or kilo or 100 ounce. I wouldn't go any bigger than that personally. But I think utility is important. So if I had my choice, if cost was no issue, I'd buy American Eagles. They're expensive now, but any coins from the six major mints and or pre 1965 junk silver is a great place to go. Dimes, quarters, half dollars minted prior to 65. But be regimented. Pay yourself first. Add as often as you can and let the laws of compounding work for you rather than against you. And I tell the story how that was the only rule my dad said I had to follow when I was 19 in 1989 when we started this company. And I've been doing this for going on 35 years. I've never missed a 2 week period ever. That was my promise. I've honored it. He's been retired for a very, very long time, over 2 decades. Not going to fire me, but I've honored that promise. And when you look and see how the laws of compounding can work to your favor, it's extraordinary. You wake up one day and it's like, shit, I'm 53 years old. Where'd that come from? Because I don't feel that way in my brain, but it's true. And when you can look back at 24 years of every 2 weeks doing something, it becomes very significant. Whether it's 24 years or 6 months, it adds up. Just keep being methodical in paying yourself first.
I always ask someone that's starting or they never bought, like, where do you see the world in 5, 10, 15 years? Because how they answer that question will heavily determine what path. I mean, some people will be buying semi-numismatic coins that will pay the higher premium because they think in 5, 10 years they'll be able to flip it and they'll be okay. And or some people will start with something that they don't understand, like Morgans. I always say buy as much as you can for as cheap as possible. Then after a couple of years or whatever, after you learn the markets, then you can branch off to some riskier stuff that is detached from spot price. But I wouldn't start there. You got to, learn how to crawl before you walk. And I also see a lot of people doing that with slab coins as well. I know I got some behind me. I think we talked about this the other day. That's one thing. And I ask people to think about how they'll be able to sell that coin before they even buy it. Like how that saved me from a lot of bad purchases, thinking ahead, but those are the most common ones that I've seen and some mistakes I've made personally.
Dude, it's a
But
federally non-regulated industry, and that's why I left my corporation in Minneapolis, which is the only state that Minnesota regulates what is federally non-regulated industry. There are a lot of people out there that will screw you and will tell you to do the wrong things. Now, not the main online companies. Most of them are all very good. JM, SD, Money Metals, Satmex. They're all solid, all of them. Not a word negative to say about any of them.
yeah,
But there are a lot of other ones out there that don't treat you that way. You want to make it simple, keep it simple. Eagles, Maples, Krugerrands, Britannias, Kangaroos, Philharmonics. Um, Keep it simple and you won't have problems. That's Pepsi, Coke, Sprite, 7 Up, A&W. You may not like the taste of one over the other, but in the end, they all drink the same thing here. Keep it simple. Buy coins from the six major mints of the world. If you want rounds, buy the 1 ounce Buffalo rounds or whatnot. Pre-65 US constitutional coins and or small bars if you have to. What will the world look like in 5, 10 years? I can see a lot of things somewhat clearly, like the coalition of the BRICS, which I've been talking about for 4 years before anyone did. And I saw it clearly. I can't tell you what the world's going to look like in 5, 10 years. It's so muddled to me. Maybe ask me that after November, and I might have a better idea.
Yeah.
But I used to never think, even in the recesses of my mind, could it be that the elections are fixed and not real? Now, I'm not saying they are, but I'm beginning to wonder, is it? Could it be? I've seen things already this year that I can't even imagine that I would ever see. And
Yeah.
ask me in November that question, and I'll tell you. I think if the current administration is put back into office, it's going to be look. Either way, you're going to have half the country pissed off. And
Yep.
Dr. Phil was just online saying, we got to stop this stuff. We're going to destroy the country for the respect and the good of the country. Stop it and become more united.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're not a united country anymore. And we need to be united. We're divided. And we're letting all of these people in here illegally. We have no idea what their intentions are, no idea what their aspirations are. How are they going to assimilate? Many don't speak our language. They have no idea the customs. I mean, where are we?
Yeah.
Who are we? And when people came into this country legally over the years, they did so with the intention and aspiration to contribute and to assimilate and to have a better life. And maybe a lot of these people do. Maybe some don't. Where, like I said, if it's 17 million and it's 1/10 of 1%, 1/10 of 1% is 1,700 people. Okay, 1%, 17,000 people. 10%, excuse me, 1%, 170,000, 10%, 1.7 million. So, keep going up and up and up, and who knows? So that I just don't know. I can't
Yeah.
tell because so many things have happened. You have to ask yourself, where are we? What's going to happen? I think a lot will be determined. A good amount might be determined in October with the BRICS meeting, and a whole hell of a lot will be determined by the election in November.
Yeah. I feel like we might have a civil war before all that, even. you know,
Well, we
but
certainly could after, I'll tell you that much. And I don't,
yeah.
I don't condone violence in any respect, but I can see how half the country is going to be furious one way or the other.
So this person says, I would like to know his take on the mining sector. Does he invest in PM mining stocks and which ones? Also, does he have an opinion on other commodities, uranium, natural gas, lithium, etc.?
Yeah, I do. I have Rick Rule has been kind enough to refer me all of his business for a long time. And he used to run a company called Global Resource Investments, and then he became the chairman of Sprott Global USA. And he left Sprott recently to do his own thing. But I still work with Sprott here in the United States, and they have an office in Carlsbad. And the brokers there are my dear friends, several of them. And out of respect, I have a managed account with one of their brokers. And I don't even know the stocks that I own. I gave him autonomy. His name is Eric Angeli. He's a hell of a broker, and he's done very well by me. But I do own mining shares. It represents a much smaller portion of my assets. I think if you envision a pyramid, where the base of your pyramid would be things like paid off real estate, precious metals, um, assets, whatever those assets are, paid for assets in the base of your pyramid. The middle portion of your pyramid would be something like short-term treasuries or utility stocks paying off a little interest, throwing off a little interest, a little more risky. And the top 10% of your pyramid would be cryptocurrencies and mining shares. The volatility and the leverage that you get on that top 10% can make more than the bottom 90% combined, but it cuts both ways. So the theory that the Swiss have used for 300 years is your base 60, 70% of your assets are low growth, safe, stable, boring, if you will. The middle portion is something a little bit more speculative, throwing off some income, and the top 10% is the home run. If you lose everything on the top 10% and make nothing break even on the middle 20 or 30, at least the base of your pyramid keeps you from moving backwards. Now, in a perfect world, you kill it in crypto and mining shares, and you make that middle portion of 5% interest on 6-month treasuries. Then the bottom of your pyramid is just gravy. So yes, I do own mining shares. I own my biggest holding that I do know is it's silver stock. It's not. I own First Majestic, but my biggest holding is can't believe I can't think of it, but I'll tell you in a second.
Pan
Um,
American.
no, Pan American. Yep, Pan American Silver is my largest silver holding. I own some gold royalty companies, Royal Gold, Franco Nevada. There are some juniors and stuff that I don't own or that I don't know what I own. But the big ones I think are what most people should own: Pan American, First Majestic, Hecla,
Yeah.
these kind of companies, and the royalty companies, which have a better business model than the mining companies do. And that's like the Royal Gold and the Pan American and Silver Wheaton. Those are all stocks that I own and like, but don't confuse the two. They're not the same thing as physical metals. They are more leveraged. They can make you more money, and it cuts both ways. You can lose more money, but I do think people should own some. They are wickedly undervalued in comparison to where they have been for a long time. I know I own Fortuna and Endeavor Silver also. I'm positive of that.
I'm gonna have to like clip when you started from that pyramid model. That's such a good way to look at it. That's so brilliant.
It's
Like,
the opposite of Exeter's pyramid, where gold and silver are the pyramid's tipped over,
yeah.
and
Oh
it's
yeah, that is if you think about it. Like if you go to a bank or something, it'll be flip-flopped.
yeah, and so again, to me, people wouldn't under most people wouldn't understand that gold and silver are would belong in the bottom part of your pyramid, but they do to me, along with paid for real estate, along with any assets that you own. And if you look at wealthy people, dude, it's not their bank accounts, it's their assets. Wealthy people have lots of assets. And assets make you rich, liability. What's the old saying? Assets feed you, liabilities eat you. And so your assets are in the base of your pyramid. And then the things that are speculative move up and up and up. The more the speculation, the higher up in the pyramid they go, because that's a smaller and smaller percentage of your assets. So when you get up to the top of the pyramid, it's, 5, 10% of your assets. But if look, I'll make an example. I own $9,000 of a stock at one time called Western Copper. A client of mine, God rest his soul, his name was John Tomczyk. He was a geologist. He said, "How much money do you got?" I said, 9 grand. I was 20 years old. And he says, "Put it all into Western Copper. Trust me, do it." I'm like, "Okay, fine. It's in an IRA." I did. It changed its name shortly after to Western Silver. I bought it all at 4, 5, 6 cents a share. I had, thousands and thousands of shares for 9 grand, and it got changed its name to Western Silver, got bought by Glamis for like $7, and Glamis got bought by Goldcorp for around 30. And I turned 9,000 into $670,000, $9,000. Now I've done that once in 34 years. It's not like this is a common occurrence. But in mining shares, that's kind of leverage you can find if you buy some juniors and explorations. So, the majority of your assets should be in the majors and the royalty companies. If you want to throw a few grand at the miner or the miners and the explorations, yeah, you can have that type of jackpot if it hits. But that's why it should belong up in the top part of your pyramid, where if it doesn't hit and you don't make it, you're not crushed. Um, that's kind of the philosophy behind it. The more stable the asset, the more it should belong in the base of your pyramid, so you don't tip over based on speculation.
Yeah, that's awesome, by the way. I think it's pretty easy. I don't know if it's just from my perspective since I do so much research, but like looking at First Majestic Silver, Keith Neumeyer, he's always getting interviewed, he's always updating how much they annually produce, or Phillips Baker, the CEO of Hecla Mining. These companies, I think Phillips Baker said they mined 16 million ounces last year, which is a record for them. And Keith Neumeyer mentioned like just above 10 million, which is actually insane to think how little. Like I like you would think 10 million ounces is a lot, but when you have an annual demand of 1.2 billion, these are the top producing silver miners in America, and they're producing like 10 to 15
Well,
million
that's
ounces.
why
That's
only 300 million ounces came from silver producers. Of the 1 billion that was mined, the rest came from companies that have no business mining silver. They're mining other things. Oh, look, we found some silver. And so that's a situation where only underscores the potential of silver, because it's depleting, it's disappearing. So if it's hard for companies who mine silver to find it, that means big deposits most likely were found long ago, and there aren't those big deposits anymore. So this is one of the supply demand imbalances that the manipulation on COMEX distorts. And if supply and demand were allowed to find equilibrium rather than it being controlled and rehypothecated on the price setting mechanism, which is now being used against us by countries like India and China who understand this, then the price would be much higher. And ultimately it will be much higher. And that's why China is offering $3 an ounce higher, almost $31 an ounce for silver in Shanghai, because that's how they arbitrage it by the dumb traders who will buy it in the West and deliver it in the East, and it will never come back ever again. And this is why they think slow and methodically, and we think, in terms of seconds, where instant gratification isn't fast enough, where people now they don't have a time horizon, and a time horizon is what it used to be about when I was in forever. Everything I've ever learned is you let the laws of compounding of time and interest work for you instead of against you. And now no one wants to do anything of that nature. They want to make it all now. I'll put it all into Bitcoin and make a gazillion dollars, or I'll put it all into this crypto or that crypto or this mining share, or I'll just buy a bunch of lottery tickets, or I'll go to the casino. It's this gambling mentality that instead of doing things methodically and letting time and interest compound in your favor, these are what made the big money wealthy over the years. The young money now here that's gotten lucky, those that have and crushed it in things like crypto or whatnot, they would be wise into taking a page out of the old guy book and put it into timeless wealth like gold and silver and let it sit there and let time work in your favor. Because I think that type of mentality works until it doesn't. This instant gratification, it's how you can lose everything if you're wrong. And that's why I say when you talk about mining shares and crypto, it belongs up in the top 10%, because if you are wrong, so what? You lost, you gambled, you knew what the outcome could have been, you knew what the risks were, but the base of your pyramid hasn't put you in a position where you're going to miss it too much. Because look, gold is appreciated by 9%, 9.5% compounding for 26 years in a row. So, I mean, not always the same amount, but you average it out, it has. So it's over time, it has worked. And I think that's the lesson to be learned, and why allocations are very important. The really speculative things that can make you a lot of money, you can also lose it just as fast. People don't want to go there and think about that, but that's why, you be prudent in how you deploy things.
Interesting. There is a few more. I don't know how much time you have left because there's
I got
some good
another
ones.
I got another 10 minutes
Okay,
for
so
my next one.
this person says, is pre 33 gold safer from confiscation? And if so, why? Is that the same for junk silver as well?
Junk silver, no. I mean, it is issued by the Treasury. It is money. I don't know that there's any law about it, but I mean, when the executive order that was used to confiscate gold in 33 was put out there, subsequently the laws basically say, and if you look at the pre-33 gold, it exempted dentists, jewelers, and collectors of coins, rare coins, and so it's the motivation you employ more so than the actual metal itself. Are you a collector? So one of the things that we try to do at no extra cost when people buy those coins is to give you variants and dates and mint marks where they were minted: Philadelphia, San Francisco, Denver, um, et cetera, Carson City. Um, Type between St. Gaudens and $20 Liberty, $10 Liberty, $10 Indian, $5 Liberty, $5 Indian, et cetera, and grade. And so we can diversify that for you. Um, so it does say that coins minted prior to 1933 would be considered collectible, but it is the motivation of the collector. Are you a collector, or are you hoarding all one date or whatever? So, I mean, it's impossible. Desperate governments do desperate things, but a lot of people think that it will give you exemption, and they have always offered better upside potential. They're massively undervalued right now. So I would, for me, I like them because they're a piece of Americana. They're very cool to hold a coin that was used as money 100+ years ago. And you can, what starts out as an investment can very quickly turn into a hobby. You can become a collector, and we can help you do that without spending really that much more money. We just are very cognizant of diversity, different dates, different mint marks, different types, and build a portfolio that very quickly turns into a collection of pre-33 gold coins that, according to the laws, are exempt. You could argue Morgan silver dollars might fit that bill too, but there really isn't any silver legislation that I know of that talks about that. So I like the pre-33s if the price is commensurate with gold bullion coins, just because they're 100 plus years old. They're part of Americana. They're really cool. And for the majority of my career, they were way more expensive than gold eagles, and now they're right there, at least in the majority of the lower uncirculated grades.
Yeah, I really want some pre-33 gold. I don't have any.
We're
So
gonna have
this
to do something
person,
about that. Now I know what to get you for your birthday.
so this person, this is a myth. I really want to bring this up because this person goes, if businesses have to report large purchases, I think it's 600 and above, they say in quotation, then does the government know what and how much metals I
We
have?
don't
Is there,
report any
yeah,
purchase. We have no
I
obligation to report any purchase unless
exactly
it was paid with
in
green
cash.
cash or money orders,
Yep.
or cashier's check, which are money instruments in excess of $10,000. If you send a
Yep.
wire or a check or an e-check, you can buy all the hell you want. You can buy 100
Yep.
million and there's no reporting. So we have
Here,
no reporting requirements. The banks might report when you take out more than that, but look, there's nothing illegal about it. And you buy this
right.
stuff and bury it in a hole in your backyard. Maybe you forgot where you buried it. I don't know. Point of it is that in a world of decreasing privacy, there are very few things that will give you that type of anonymity the way gold and silver will.
Yeah, and there's this myth um this $10,000 level. It is if it's in cash above 10,000. Now, theoretically, you could purchase $9,999 and then wait a couple weeks. That might, I mean, see a pattern. It could be, a little, a little suspicious, but it literally is 10,000 above in cash. Like if you went to your local coin shop, and isn't it specific metals even with that, or some are exempt?
The $10,000 limit would be any cash in any retail capacity. If you went right now and bought your whole family a wardrobe at Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom's or wherever and went in with 11 grand in cash, you will get issued a form 8300. Um, and that's an excess cash form. If you went to buy a new car and paid with over 10 grand in cash, you get issued a form 8300. So it's not just investments, it's any retail purchase in the United States where you're paying with green money above 10 grand. And,
Okay.
maybe you've made all your money, selling weed for the last 30 years and you got $1 million in 10 and $20 bills in a box that you don't want the government to know about. Well, you're going to have a problem if you go and try to spend over 10 grand with all this cash when your W-2, when your tax return says you haven't made any money over all these years. Well, how'd you get that? That's really the essence of it. If you're someone who's been, employed and making a decent living and paying your taxes and abiding by the law and decide to spend 20 grand on something that you've accumulated cash with, well, big deal. You probably won't get a knock on your door, but you have no real way to prove how you got that money. And you would be someone who shouldn't have that money based upon, what they see of you. Well, you might have a problem. That's really what it's all about. But we don't have any. If someone sends us a wire like the two orders we did for $52 million each, there was no reporting at all. Zero. No reason to report it. We received a wire. So that's the truth.